Thank you all for joining me today, and I want to thank State Treasurer Joe Torsella, who's joining us also. Thank you, Joe. Treasurer Torsella and I know that many Pennsylvanians are struggling due to the impact COVID-19 has had on the economy. So today, we're announcing that many homeowners, renters, and people with disabilities will receive early rebates through the property tax and rent rebate program. Now, typically, these rebates are issued starting July 1st. But I know that having even a small amount of extra money can help many Pennsylvanians during this crisis. So earlier today, I signed into law House Bill 1076, which authorizes the early distribution of this rebate. And Treasurer Torsella and I will begin issuing the rebates starting tomorrow, actually today, to applicants who have been approved. Anyone who already applied for a rebate can use the Where's My PA Property Tax Rent Rebate tool on the Department of Revenue's website to check the status of their rebate. Pennsylvanians eligible for the rebate program include certain Pennsylvanians age 65 or older, widows and widowers age 50 or older, and Pennsylvanians with disabilities age 18 or older. And there's an annual income cap of $35,000 for homeowners, $15,000 for renters, of course, with half of the Social Security income excluded. Now, Pennsylvanians who fit into these categories can qualify for a rebate of up to $975 of property taxes and rent paid in 2017. This program is funded by the Pennsylvania Lottery and revenue from slots gaming, and has provided more than $6.9 billion in property tax and rent relief since 1971. It's free to apply, and the application and other information is found on the Department of Revenue's website. This is just one of the many initiatives undertaken by my administration to assist Pennsylvanians during this crisis. We've also provided food to Pennsylvanians by increasing SNAP benefits and food bank funding. We've ensured health care insurers cover medically appropriate COVID-19 diagnostic testing and associated treatment. We've established a 24/7 mental health crisis line, worked with school districts to provide meals to students. We've extended tax filing deadlines. We've postponed evictions and foreclosures, and so much more. Each of these small actions fit together to strengthen our Commonwealth, and each helps reduce stress on Pennsylvanians so they can focus on preventing the spread of COVID-19. I will continue to identify programs, big and small, that will alleviate the effects this crisis has had on Pennsylvanians. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn this over to Treasurer Torsella. Joe.
Thank you, Governor. It's good to be with you in this way, and thank you for your steady leadership at this time of great challenge for Pennsylvania. It's my pleasure to join you today to announce the results of this partnership that will help so many Pennsylvanians, our families, our friends, our neighbors during this time of crisis. I want to acknowledge at the outset also the efforts of the General Assembly and their efforts to create legislation that have enabled us to move forward on this partnership, especially the efforts of Representative Jared Solomon. Since the beginning of this crisis, we at Treasury have asked, as you have, Governor, of ourselves the same question every day, which is what can we do to help combat the spread of COVID-19 and to help Pennsylvania and Pennsylvanians get back on their feet again from the economic impact that has come with fighting that pandemic. Today's announcement is, I think, a very important step in that direction. By the numbers, what it means is simply this, that the 500,000 or so approximate rent rebate payments that we issue every year will be issued as much as 6 weeks earlier than usual, beginning today with the issuance of 111,000 of those payments to some of our Pennsylvania most vulnerable citizens, and continuing at a pace of 60,000 every week thereafter. So instead of the usual pattern of issuing these for a few weeks after July 1st in one batch, we bring that forward and beginning today, getting those checks and deposit out to the Pennsylvanians who so desperately need them. What it means, I think, more broadly than the numbers is the message that we're sending. And the message that we're sending, again, to some of our most vulnerable Pennsylvanians is, we hear you, we understand what you're going through, we're doing everything in our power to help, and we understand that your government, work for you. It takes a lot of work for Treasury to distribute these checks under normal circumstances. I was surprised to learn when I got to Treasury it's the biggest printing check job of the entire year. It takes even more work to do it in a time when Treasury is mostly virtually working during a time of pandemic and with these challenges. But we are doing it because it is the right thing to do. It's what we intend to do. And most importantly, it's what we owe to the Pennsylvania citizens we serve who need this relief at this time. So I want to take quickly just one moment to thank the employees at Treasury who have been able to make this work. I want to thank the governor's team and the General Assembly and the Treasury personnel who, by their innovation and creativity and determination not to let business as usual get in the way of helping Pennsylvanians, have worked so hard to find a way to meet this challenge head on and to take this step. This partnership with your administration, Governor, is just one way that we're working to continue earning the faith that Pennsylvanians have placed in us. None of us can make this pandemic end on our own, but all of us can if we work together in ending the pandemic and in helping Pennsylvania to recover from it. If there's a precedent that we need to break, or a status quo we need to look past, or a silo that needs to come down, or an old way of doing business that needs to end, if that's what it takes to get the job done during this, then we here at Treasury are going to do that as your administration has. So I'm glad to be here today. And now I'd like to turn it over for questions.
Thank you, Treasurer. Our first questions are for the Governor from Penn Live. When Dauphin County moves into the yellow phase, would you then reopen the Capitol and Capitol complex to visitors, or will it be in the green phase before that can happen?
Yeah, let me just say, first of all, thank you to Treasurer Torsella for your leadership. I think this is just another example of the unprecedented things that we're trying to do, that you're trying to do, that all of us in government are trying to do to make sure that we make the point that you just made, and that is we work for the people of Pennsylvania. So thank you for that. Now, for the question, in the yellow category, things start to open up. We're still in the era of caution, and I think it's 25 people or more is still beyond the guidelines. So I'm not sure exactly what the plans are for the Capitol, but I would, whatever we do, I think we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep that virus from infecting people. And so if that means keeping things shut down for longer, then I think that's what's going to have to happen. Let me just point out that people working normally in the Capitol, when they can telework, are doing that. And so state workers continue to telework. I think the Treasurer called virtual working. We're actually teleworking, and that will continue. So to the extent that affects people who normally work inside the Capitol, they're going to continue to work, just not inside the Capitol.
Also from Penn Live, do you have an opinion on whether Pennsylvania colleges should reopen for in-person classes in the fall? Will it matter what phase of your reopening plan the county is in where they're located?
Yeah, I think the colleges and universities are facing the same question that public schools are facing, that the primary and secondary schools are facing, and that is, what can they do to make sure that their educators, their teachers are safe, that the students are safe? What assurances can they give parents? So again, this is true of primary and secondary as well as higher education schools, private and public. And in my conversations with the educators, I think all of them are looking to, as they look toward the fall, are looking to create a very different educational experience than the ones that preceded this pandemic.
Also from Penn Live on real estate, do you plan to reconsider allowing real estate activity to resume in some form or fashion, since now there is bipartisan legislative support for allowing that to happen?
Yeah, I don't like the piece of legislation that came out. In fact, the township supervisors didn't like it either, because I think one of the provisions was that it actually allowed for things to open before they were considered safe or inspected by local authorities. So I have my own guidance on real estate. I agree that real estate activities in some form and fashion ought to occur. And so today I'll be issuing guidelines that at least address the concerns I think we all ought to address if we want to keep safe in this pandemic.
We have a question for you, Governor, from Capitol Wire on housing. A House committee today is considering two Senate-passed bills focused on helping with housing issues in Pennsylvania. One would create a first-time home buyer savings account program, while the other would establish a tax credit program that mirrors the federal low-income housing tax credit, which supporters of the legislation say is the main vehicle for the creation and preservation of affordable rental housing. Are you supportive of those proposals?
Yeah, I won't know exactly what's in those proposals until they reach my desk because things change. But in general, I definitely support the idea of making housing more affordable, more accessible. And to the extent we in Pennsylvania can do that, I heartily support it. So again, I'll wait to see exactly what's in the bill when it reaches, they reach my desk. But in general, those are two things that I'm very supportive of.
Thank you. We have a question for Treasurer Torsella. Will the closing of the casinos create a funding shortfall for property tax rebate programs? And if so, how will the state make up that shortfall?
Well, I can't speak. I mean, the governor and the legislature will be looking at the outlook for all of next year across all the revenue sources that have been challenged. But in terms of what we're announcing today, no. A provision has been made for funding the rebates on the schedule that we talked about. And I say those checks are beginning to go out today. They will go out at a rate of 60,000 more per week. The batch that goes out today amounts to $50 million on a weekly basis. There'll be an additional $30 million that we're getting in the hands of those families, and there are sufficient funds in the lottery fund to do that.
Thank you. These next questions are from the Associated Press for the governor on nursing homes. The White House has strongly recommended that states test every nursing home resident and staffer in their state by May 25th. What are the reasons that Pennsylvania can't accomplish that?
Well, we're trying to accomplish that as fast as we can. We actually kicked off weekly testing for employees and for patients a week ago. So we are moving as quickly as we can, and I think as of yesterday, our capacity for testing, we had 11,000 tests in Pennsylvania yesterday. So that is the third straight day we've done more and more testing. As we build that capacity, that will allow us to implement fully this program in all of our long-term care facilities. There are 2,000 long-term care facilities, including nursing homes in Pennsylvania, and the hope is that as quickly as possible we can get to the weekly testing of all employees and all patients.
Also from the Associated Press on nursing homes. More than 2/3 of the state's COVID-19 deaths are among residents of nursing homes. That is one of the highest rates in the country. What could Pennsylvania have done better to protect its older citizens?
That's a question we ask ourselves every day, and I think actually around the world this is something that every nation is trying to figure out. We have done things like provide personal protective equipment for employees. We shut down visitors to all long-term care facilities. We have, as I said just a minute ago, moved to weekly testing as we can do that in all long-term care facilities. But we keep trying to figure out what can we do better to address this issue. There is no question. In Pennsylvania and all across the world, long-term care facilities have been places where this virus has wreaked absolute havoc. And we keep trying to figure out what we can do better as we move along in this pandemic, and we will certainly try to learn from what we have found out here in terms of moving forward.
This is a somewhat similar question on nursing homes from ABC 27, but Governor, today the state will publicly release coronavirus data about specific nursing homes. What is your reaction to critics who say the state was way too slow to recognize the danger and way too slow to react to it? there's a quick follow-up, but I'll let you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think in hindsight, we actually, there are a lot of things that maybe we'll learn, and I hope we do, that we could do better. But keep in mind, long-term care facilities are places that have dealt with infectious diseases throughout their existence. That's the nature of a nursing home. When you bring people together, that infections can happen. And so they have been used to dealing with infectious diseases. This has just overwhelmed them, as it has everybody. This coronavirus is something that is more contagious than anything we've seen, at least in my lifetime before, and certainly, I think, more contagious and more infectious than anything the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or most, or not all, countries have seen in recent memory. So we need to learn from what's happened. But again, nursing homes have had a long experience with infectious diseases. This has just overwhelmed everybody.
We have a question for you, Governor, from WLVR. A bill that would allow restaurants and bars to serve mixed drinks and cocktails to go is on your desk. Do you plan to sign it and let bars and restaurants begin rebuilding their businesses?
I do plan to sign it. It was passed, I think, unanimously in both chambers of the General Assembly, so I will sign that.
We have a question from Spotlight PA for you, Governor. How do you want to focus the state share of the $3.9 billion in coronavirus relief funds, and when do you expect you will begin appropriating funds? Why haven't you done so yet?
Working with the General Assembly, I don't want to do this unilaterally. I want to do this in partnership with the General Assembly, and that has taken some time. But the focus for me is making sure that as we appropriate this $3.9 billion, we direct it in ways that everybody in Harrisburg recognizes is going to be best for addressing the challenges that this pandemic has given us. Yes. The Treasurer has a comment on that.
This part of the express purpose of the CARES Act, in addition to the appropriations that will be made from eventually, was explicitly to provide near-term cash flow relief to the states, which it is done, and it has done that very well. So there are sort of two parts to those funds, and the immediate purpose of allocating them as quickly as they did was to provide liquidity, which in this case has worked. The question of what they're ultimately spent on is a longer and different question that has lots of moving pieces and lots of different inputs, as the governor mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for you, Governor, from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. What did you think about Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger getting his hair and beard cut recently at an Allegheny County barbershop? Will the barbershop face disciplinary action? Is the state investigating?
Yeah, my concern is just a general concern. Anybody who puts himself or herself into harm's way is something that I think we ought to try to avoid. And when you go to something like a barbershop and you're not protected, I don't care who you are, the chances of that virus actually wreaking havoc on your life increases. I don't personally think that any Pennsylvanian ought to take that chance. I certainly don't want to take that chance myself.
Thank you. We have a couple questions for the Treasurer. From the Pennsylvania Capital Star, is there a cap on the rebate? Simply, is it first come, first serve for the money until it is all spent?
I thought the question was actually going to be about my lack of a haircut, but thank you. The caps on the amount are set by statute for the program, and I believe the maximums range from up to, depending on circumstances, from 650 to 900 and something. And those are set by statute and depends on the circumstance of the applicant. The refunds are being processed normally in a normal year. We do all these in one huge batch on July 1 and for a few weeks thereafter. What we're doing instead is doing these kind of on a as the applications have been received and approved by revenue in order to get that money out there quickly. We don't foresee, I mean, as we project going forward, we don't foresee running out of funds to do that. And I'm sure that making sure that doesn't happen will be a subject of the budget discussions that go on. So no one listening should feel that there is a danger that because they have not applied yet this year, that they will somehow be left out. That's not at all we're doing the first in, first out as a way to advance the money, as a logical way of doing something, and to get it out there more quickly. The normal, my understanding is that the normal level of total applications is on the order of 500,000 a year. I think that total right now is something like 300,000 have applied, but we have every expectation and intent that anyone who qualifies will get that money and will get that relief and will have that help and will get that money in their pockets and back in the Pennsylvania economy.
Thank you. We have another question specific to the first in, first out, Treasurer, that I'm going to give to you, and then I think the governor may want to comment as well from Spotlight PA. Is it possible that under the new first in, first out plan, that some payments may take longer to get to some applicants, that some payments will be released after July 1, or will all payments be paid out by that date?
I don't see that. I don't see it being possible that someone's disadvantaged by this. As I said, we're issuing literally 110,000 today, and preparing to do another 60,000 per week. Which, if you do the math, takes us up. The latest anyone would get their payment would be the soonest they would have under the old system.
I defer to the treasurer on that. I think he knows exactly how the process works.
Governor, we have a question for you from WJAC TV. You said you would approve the NASCAR race at Pocono Raceway if the raceway was in the yellow stage. Yet, you and Dr. Levine have said in the past that organized sports will still not be permitted to resume in the yellow stage. Why the apparent hypocrisy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We're working with lots of organizations, the NHL, the NFL, Major League Baseball, to figure out how, when sports start again, they can do it safely. And I know in terms of NASCAR and these others, they're looking at competing in front of empty stands. They're doing all kinds of things to make sure that their competitors are safe. They have safe accommodations for housing, that when they eat, that's done in a safe fashion, that they're practicing social distancing, wearing masks, all those kinds of things. And so that's what we're looking at. The guidance, again, is going to be focused on making sure people are safe. And to the extent we're not confident that people are going to be safe, I'm going to have a problem, and the administration is going to have a problem opening back up. So, again, this is not something that is focused just on NASCAR. It's on any group that's coming together. How do we make sure that we reduce, to the extent possible, the possibilities that this virus is going to spread, and at the same time get us back to some normalcy as quickly and efficiently and effectively as we can.
From the morning call for you, Governor. There is a media report that a state senator has called on the Attorney General to investigate the Southeastern Veterans Center run by the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Can you comment on the widely publicized complaints of family members and people associated with the facility? And do you think an investigation by the Attorney General is necessary?
I'm not sure if that is absolutely necessary. I think it's, as in every long-term care facility, we have a work to do to make sure that we do everything we can to protect the people who are in these long-term care facilities. As to specific problems in specific long-term care facilities, I know that's an area, that particular center has been cited, and I'm sure that we'll find out more as we ask more questions.
Also from the morning call, can you comment on the House passage yesterday of a resolution that creates a special committee to focus on topics related to COVID-19? Do you think such a committee is necessary, and do you have suggestions on what areas it can look at?
My suggestion would be we need to work together, and we've had various proposals to get the General Assembly and the administration to work together. I haven't seen the specific outlines of that particular resolution, but I have expressed a long time willingness and eagerness to actually work with the General Assembly on how we together as a Commonwealth address COVID-19. Also working with local and county elected officials. I think that there are partnerships that we need to have all across the Commonwealth, healthcare professionals, elected officials, state and local and county. We need to continue to work together. So again, I look forward to getting the details of that resolution. But in general, these are things that we ought to be doing. Whatever we do, working together, we can do a lot more than if we try to do these things in silos.
Thank you. This from the Scranton Times-Tribune for you, Governor. Is there a realistic projection on when more populated counties in the Northeast, like Lackawanna and Luzerne, can move to the yellow phase?
I don't have specific information, or we have not made a decision yet on when Lackawanna and Luzerne County move from red to yellow.
This question for you, Governor, from Fox 43. You and Attorney General Josh Shapiro recently announced protections for evictions and foreclosures through July 10th. What would your message be to a landlord who are raising some tenant rents right now?
Well, I think in a pandemic, in any crisis where we're all trying to work together, I think I'd be a little careful about that. I think every landlord, every business person has to make their own decision. But what the Attorney General and I were trying to do in extending the Supreme Court's ban on evictions, postponing that. And again, by the way, we did not put off the rent being due or mortgage payments being due. It was just postponed. But the idea was to make sure that people had shelter during this pandemic. And I think anything that anybody does that jeopardizes that is going to be a problem.
This is for you, Governor, from News Talk WMPT. Why are counties that have very low case counts remaining in the yellow phase? What is the threshold to move to the green phase?
I'm not sure of any county with a very low case count that hasn't moved into yellow. So maybe I'm missing something. And as I keep saying, as Dr. Levine keeps saying, the criteria we use for deciding whether a county is going to move from red to yellow is broader than just one category. I know everybody keeps pointing to the 50 per 100,000 population over a 14-day period. We look at a whole bunch of different things, and so I'm not sure why that particular metric has been used, but I'm not aware of any county that has been doing a really good job on that particular metric that is remaining in red. I'm just not aware of any.
Thank you. We have time for another question, this one for the Treasurer and also perhaps for you, Governor Wolf, but we'll start with Treasurer Torsella. Do you believe school districts should be raising taxes during the pandemic?
I think that the fiscal implications of the pandemic we're only beginning to grapple with, and the visibility is quite unclear. We know that when we look at the state budget, for example, that a significant amount of revenues are not in this fiscal year. Some of them are coming in next fiscal year. I know we're going to hear from the IFO soon. I think that the road ahead, the dimensions of what's happening to revenues is not yet entirely clear. I think those discussions are premature.
Yeah, and I agree with the Treasurer. I mean, we're in a pandemic, and this is not a time to burden any Pennsylvanian with some additional responsibility or tax. So I think we ought to, all of us, in a position to lighten the load for Pennsylvanians, we ought to be looking to do that rather than the reverse.